Today's episode of The Real Deal with Damian Adams is brought to you by the 3pointconversion.com. Now, 3pointconversion.com is where fans' opinions matter. It's a sports media site that gets you everything you need in the world of sports. If you need updates on football, basketball, baseball, hockey, NASCAR, WNBA, any sport under the sun, we got you. If you want to read in-depth articles on all those sports I just mentioned, we have a group of talented writers from all over the country on a 3-point conversion that will satisfy those needs as well. So make sure you follow the 3-point conversion on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and visit the site 3pointconversion.com because again, it's where fans' opinions matter. Thank you for listening to The Real Deal with Damian Adams. This is real sports talk for the real sports fan. And I definitely appreciate all you real sports fans who are listening right now. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you. Please do not forget to give us that 5-star rating and review. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. That 5-star rating and review will definitely be appreciated. If you're listening on the 3-point conversion station on Spreaker Radio, thank you as well. The 3-point conversion station is where fans' opinions matter. So please give us a review on the 3-point conversion station. Let us know how you think the show is doing. Great, not so great. If you don't like it at all those opinions matter. Let us know what you think. I want to be great at this, and I cannot be great without your critiques. In today's episode, I'm very excited. Later on, I have Mark Kelly, former ESPN researcher, one of the best football minds I know, coming down to break down week 1 of the NFL with me. Of course, some little sports trivia, forgotten players. You should definitely be a great guest. But first, let's talk a little boxing. I'm introducing a new segment called the 1-2, where we talk all boxing. And this weekend's a big weekend in boxing because we have a welterweight title fight. Now, the welterweight division right now is the darling of boxing. You have so many talented fighters in the welterweight division. You talk about Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Shawn Porter, who's fighting this weekend. You have Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford now. You could have Mike Garcia come into the division. It's a very talented division that is just full of potential. And Keith Thurman, who was the WBC champion, has been out for quite a while with injuries. And he had to vacate the title. So now we have Danny Garcia versus Shawn Porter this weekend for the vacant WBC Welterweight Championship. And both of these fighters are interesting. They're both very talented, but also have glaring flaws. So let's start with Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter comes into this fight this weekend with a record of, one moment, I'll get that record for you. A record of 28-2, 1 draw. And I'm not a big fan of his fighting style. I feel he has potential to be more pleasing to the eye, but in a lot of his fights, it becomes a wrestling match. He wants to get you against the ropes. He's fighting on the inside, but he has not learned how to fight on the inside while also giving that space to be able to create offense. A lot of times it's just, throwing punches at awkward angles to where it's not pleasing to watch. Like one fight that comes to mind for an example is the fight against Andre Berto. He won that fight, but at the end of the day, it was just him pretty much wrestling with Berto against the ropes, not really getting any clean punches off. And I still believe to this day his best performance was in a loss against Keith Thurman. If you remember the fight against Keith Thurman, it was on CBS, I believe. Over 5 million people watched it. It was an excellent night for boxing as a whole. And they went at it. Great punches. And Thurman, because he moves around so much, Shawn Porter had to kind of fight on the outside, had to box him, had to land clean punches to even be in the fight. And it forced him to show the boxing skill that he doesn't really show in other fights. Even in his fight against Adrian Broner, the whole time he was just able to outwork Broner. And a lot of times you'll hear someone like Jalen Rose talk about in basketball, skill versus will. And of course there's boxers like that as well. There's a lot of skillful boxers, and there's also boxers that fight on pure will. And Shawn Porter is one of those fighters who fights on pure will. And you have to have an appreciation for that. And there's people who have made a lot of money in basketball being will guys. You think about DeAndre Jordan. You want to take it back to the day. Dennis Rodman. Those guys were so good at playing defense and rebounding, doing those things that are effort based, that they were able to become stars. Dennis Rodman is a Hall of Famer because he was so good at playing defense and doing those, and getting rebounds that no one else could get because of his effort. That's what Shawn Porter does in the boxing ring. He's someone who's just going to keep going, never going to stop, just an effort guy. And it's an interesting matchup with him going against Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia, also has just one loss. His loss also came to Keith Thurman in a very good fight where you could tell his skill just wasn't on Thurman's level. Danny Garcia is not someone who's going to wrestle with you. He wants to box. But his boxing skill, I believe, isn't on par with the elite. Not of yet. But he is 30 years old, so I don't know if that's going to change at this point in his career. Now, the key to the fight, I would say for Danny Garcia, got to keep it in the middle of the ring. Make sure that you don't let Porter on the inside, because Porter's like a bulldog, man. He's going to keep coming and keep coming. You got to make sure you're hitting him with straight rights. Catch him coming in with maybe a check left hook. Make sure that he feels it every time he comes in. Make him hesitate on coming in. With Porter, he has to make sure he doesn't smother his own offense by coming in and trying to just get as close as possible. Be aggressive, but with a plan. With Shawn Porter, sometimes he's aggressive, but there's no game plan with that aggressiveness. It's just him just coming in, just and he gets in there, and then nothing happens. So you have to make sure with Shawn Porter that he comes in and isn't just mauling Danny Garcia. He's actually coming in with a game plan to make sure he gets offense off when he's close inside. And I think this is going to be a very good fight, a very close fight. The 50-50 fight. I don't know who to pick. It hasn't been like some of the fights that we've had this year where it was easy to pick the winner. I think that this is a big month for boxing. We got Danny Garcia versus Shawn Porter this weekend. Next weekend we have Triple G versus Canelo, which of course we'll get into on the next episode. Later this month we have not Deontay Wilder. I was about to say Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua. But no, we don't have that one. We have Anthony Joshua versus Povetkin, which also should be a decent fight, but not the fight we want in the heavyweight division. Still very good though. So when you have this much going on in boxing, you need fights that are pleasing to the eye so they become events, so that other fans who are not big-time boxing fans come into the sport. So with Danny Garcia, Shawn Porter being on Showtime, and you're hoping fans like myself expose it to your casual fan, you need someone like Shawn Porter to not just be in there mucking it up the whole time, because then the casual fan's going to get turned off really quickly. Triple G, Canelo, you're going to have your casual fans anyway because Canelo's such a big star. You got yourself a rematch of a fight that ended in controversy last year. It all sets up for a big-time event. So I'm looking forward to this month, a very big month in boxing. The fight card on Saturday should be good. Not just the main event, but the whole card itself should be good on Showtime. So I'm looking forward to it. But for my prediction on Danny Garcia versus Shawn Porter, I got Danny Garcia winning by decision. Like I said, I don't believe either of these guys are perfect when it comes to their technique, but Danny Garcia is a little better with his technique and does have a little more power, I believe, and pop, especially in those hooks. So I see Danny Garcia winning this one by decision. Close though, like 7-5, 8-4, very close, but so it's going to be a decision that people are going to be able to live with, not too controversial. Danny Garcia winning by decision this weekend. This was the first segment of the Pop Pop 1-2. We're going to take our first commercial break of the evening, play a little music. When I come back, it's going to be with my man Mark Kelly to help break down the NFL. We'll be right back.
Representing that first and 15. Yeah, and this this one right here. I dedicate this one right here to all my homies out there grinding. You know what I'm saying? Legally and illegally. You know what I'm talking about? So, check it out. First got it when he was 6, didn't know any tricks. Matter of fact, first time he got on it, he slipped. Landed on his hip and busted his lip. For a week he had to talk with a list like this. Now we can end the story right here, but Shorty didn't quit, it was something in the air. Yeah, he said it was something so appealing, he couldn't fight the feeling. Something about it, he knew he couldn't doubt it, couldn't understand it. Branded, since the first kick flip he landed. Labeled a misfit, a bandit. Cocoon, cocoon, cocoon. His neighbors couldn't stand it, so he was banished to the park. Started in the morning, one stopped after dark. Yeah, when they said it's getting late in here, so I'm sorry, young man, there's no skating here. And so we kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, coast. And the way he rolled, just a rebel to the world with no place to go. And so we kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, coast. So come and skate with me, just a rebel looking for a place to be. So let's kick and push and coast. My man got a little older, became a better roller. Yeah, no helmet, hell-bent on killing himself is what his mama said, but he was feeling himself. Got a little more swag in his style. Met his girlfriend, she was clapping in the crowd. Love is what was happening to him now. He said I would marry you, but I'm engaged to these aerials and burials, and I don't think this board is strong enough to carry two. She said, bow, I weigh 120 pounds. Now, let me make one thing clear, I don't need to ride yours, I got mine right here. So she took him to a spot he didn't know about, some odd in the apartment parking lot. She said, I don't normally take dates in here. Security came and said, I'm sorry, there's no skating here. And so they kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, coast. And the way they roll, just lovers intertwined with no place to go. And so they kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, coast. So come and skate with me, just a rebel looking for a place to be. So let's kick and push, and coast. Yeah, swanky. Yeah, before he knew he had a crew, there wasn't no punk, and they spit fire shirts and SB dunks. They would push till they couldn't skate no more. Office building lobbies wasn't safe no more, and it wasn't like they wasn't getting chased no more. Just the freedom was better than breathing, they said. An escape route they used to escape out when things got crazy. They needed to break out they head to any place with stairs, any good grinds, the world was theirs. And they four wheels would take them there until the cops came and said there's no skating here. And so they kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, coast. And the way they roll, just rebels without a cause with no place to go. And so they kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, kick, push, coast. So come roll with me, just a rebel looking for a place to be. So let's kick and push and coast. Haha, swanky.
Welcome back to The Real Deal with Damian Adams. Hopefully you enjoyed that Lupe Fiasco right there. And now it's time for us to get into a little football. And I had to bring on to the podcast one of the best football minds I know, if not the best. The guy definitely knows his stuff. Someone who not only is very knowledgeable, but one of the strongest people I know. My man, Mark Kelly. What's going on, Mark?
How you doing, Damian? Nice to be back. Yeah, that's quite a compliment. One of the strongest football minds. I'm not sure I deserve that type of recognition, but thank you very much.
Oh, no doubt, man. Definitely, I always want to give my guests praise. I definitely, whenever I have someone on the show, it's because I believe they know what they're talking about. You know, so I'm always going to give that confidence to my guests. Thank you for coming on. And before we get into the football week, your Jets, Khalil Mack, and all that stuff, what do you have going on, man? You have anything that you want to promote?
Well, I haven't been involved as much in sports the last couple months. I've had some health issues, so I've had to take a little bit of a hiatus, but I just started to write again. And I write for a website called ESNY. It's over here in New York. It's a pretty good website that does a lot of New York sports. And I'm a cancer survivor, so I've put a lot of energy into writing a book that is going to be coming out in the spring about my experience surviving cancer and about people that live with the disease. Even though if you beat the disease, that's one thing, but you still have to deal with the side effects. And the side effects for me, I was for those of you who don't know my background, I was a researcher at ESPN for years. And the side effects of the chemo and radiation really did a number on me to where I developed Crohn's disease and lymphedema and a couple other things that affect my everyday health to where I couldn't work consistently anymore. I had won two Emmys in my time at ESPN, and it was a job I was perfectly fitted for. So I've had to kind of recreate myself and find things that I'm able to do, being that I haven't been able to work consistently. So that's a challenge for people who, even though you beat cancer, you still there are people that spend their whole life building their life, getting doctorates and going to college and setting themselves up for their career, and then they get sick, and then the side effects of chemo and radiation take away their ability, things that they planned their whole life for. And that's a big part that I think the cancer community misses. So I'm trying to put a little bit of awareness to people like me who have so-called beaten the disease, yet suffer every day from the side effects.
And what advice would you give to someone out there who's in that position, who may have, like you said, just quote-unquote may have beat the disease, but is still dealing with those after effects of going through all the treatment?
Well, the thing that really I've found is it's very frustrating dealing with who you are, because you have to have a strong foundation in what you believe. Now, being a Christian for a number of years, I still have a foundation in Jesus Christ. That's what I built my life on. But even that, it's still hard to, once you've established yourself in a certain area and you've prepared your life for it, to kind of develop another part of who you are. But my advice would be that we all have things to give back. And no matter what you have taken from you, what abilities you no longer have that you had before, how you need to reinvent yourself, we are all designed uniquely and individually by God. And we all have abilities that we can still give, even if we don't think we can give anymore. There are plenty of days where I can't walk and I'm sick to my stomach and I don't even want to get out of bed. But I have to get up to motivate myself that, I'm still able to provide a difference. My story is still able to provide a difference to others who are suffering. And if they can, get inspired by me and what I deal with every day, that helps me, it helps them, it helps, people who are dealing with what I'm dealing with, overcome whatever situation they're in. And it's not just for cancer survivors. It's anybody that has a illness or anybody that has a disability, anybody that's dealing with not fitting in because they're not what society deems as normal, or they don't fit the criteria of what a successful person would look like. There's so much more that they can do. There's so much that the individual can, that we've been blessed with, that we need to look at. Myself, I always had a passion for sports. I had a passion for writing. I'm trying to rebuild myself that way. I have a passion for public speaking. I'm very good at it. I love to share my story and inspire others. So that's really what I've been trying to do. And my book coming out is a big way that I'll be able to do that, because it really gets into detail about what it's like to be diagnosed, the hope kind of that cancer takes away from you, how to handle that, how to deal with having your abilities taken away, how to deal with changes in your life, your family, everybody kind of looking at you different. And there seems to be this understanding that because you went through this life-changing experience that you have more knowledge or a deeper understanding of life, which definitely is the case, but you can't really put that much pressure on yourself to be everyone's barometer of what a stable life life should look like and really appreciating the little things in life. I think when you go through something like that, you're able to see things and experience things differently because you know what it's like to almost have your life taken away from you. But that doesn't mean that you automatically don't make mistakes. That doesn't mean automatically that you are saved from what everybody else worries about, bills and paying things and mortgages that the average person deals with. You're not saved from those things. So it's really understanding things that you can do still, even though you might have what you had planned to do taken away from you. It's still understanding that you have something. God created us all to be, to help each other, to be here, to encourage each other. And you still have things that you can do to give back and to make yourself important again in life.
And I love the way that you put that. Hopefully that reaches someone out there who is dealing with the same things that you are dealing with. And do you have a title for the book that's coming out next spring?
It's called My Scars Tell a Story. Going through treatment, you can get scars from the chemotherapy or the radiation. Radiation especially can leave scars on you. So I have a couple of them on my back from surgeries and things that had happened to me. So it's basically that all the things that I've been through, when you look at me, you won't be able to see it right off the bat. The scars are kind of hidden, but they're there and they do tell a story.
That's an awesome title. And where can people find you on social media to talk to you about these things before the book comes out?
Well, on Facebook, I started a page called Cancer Survivors Permanently Affected by Treatment. They also can, find me at Facebook under Mark Kelly. I still use my CK Magic Sports, which I write articles every once in a while. I haven't done it as much lately, but I'm still going to get back into it and doing sports since it's what I really love. But my other passion definitely is being able to spread the cancer awareness. My logo is Knockout Cancer because I want the people to have the ability to knock out the side effects that long-term cancer treatment gives you. And there are studies coming along all over that kids that had cancer that kids who had cancer and were treated with chemo and radiation years later are getting these side effects from the treatment because of the types of drugs they were on. Because chemo and radiation really are two disgusting, horrible things that you can do to the human body. So that's primarily what I'm trying to do, along with doing some sports stuff here and there. But it's basically understanding what you can still do despite being limited in life. And yeah, that's where they can find me. They can find me on Facebook under Mark Kelly. They can find me on my page, which is dedicated to cancer survivors, called Cancer Survivors, dealing with cancer survivors permanently affected by treatment.
Yes, everybody make sure you go and follow that page, like that page. Make sure you follow Mark or friend him on Facebook, because what he's talking about is real. It's very important. We all have either been affected by cancer directly, we've lost a loved one, or we know someone who's lost a loved one. We've all been affected by cancer in some way. So hopefully one day we can get to a point where it's no longer affecting us in the same way. Now let's make this difficult transition into sports.
Moving right along.
It feels so obsolete to talk about sports after that, but you are a big sports fan, a big Jets fan. And the Jets this year are going to be starting a rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold. Guys just traded, who looks like a pretty good quarterback, in Teddy Bridgewater to my Saints. What is your outlook on the Jets right now and your expectations going into the season?
Well, I think people got to realize the Jets still lack a lot of what they need to be a consistent, successful team. Because they got Darnold, they gave away a couple of draft picks in the second round. Now, historically, if you look at who the Jets drafted in the second round, that's not a bad thing, since their second-round draft picks have been historically horrendous. But they still needed draft picks to rebuild this franchise, and they're not there yet. And even even if they would have made that trade for Khalil Mack, they still don't have enough on the offensive line or on the defensive line, which sounds weird because they spent so many first-round picks on the defensive line in the last couple of years. But people got to remember that. And I think Jets fans are so eager to see Darnold be the ultimate savior and have the kind of impact that, you know, Andrew Luck had on the Colts in 2012. And I don't think that's really fair of him or fair of the Jets to put all that pressure on him yet. Historically, the Jets have not had a franchise quarterback for a long time, if ever. I still don't consider Namath a franchise quarterback, even though he's in the Hall of Fame and he did win a Super Bowl. If you look at his overall stats, they're very mediocre. But you know, Jet fans have been waiting for a long time to have someone at the quarterback position who they can rely on. I mean, they thought it was going to be Jack Pennington. Then he got injured and he had arm troubles. They thought it was going to be Mark Sanchez after the first 2 years leading them to the AFC Championship game. But you know, he had some off the field issues. Then when they got Tim Tebow, that really struck a blow to his confidence. And then some other things happened with them drafting Geno Smith and him not starting, and then them using him late in the preseason game where he got hurt. So there are a lot of things that happened to Sanchez that kind of derailed his career. People thought Geno Smith might have been a good pick for them, but Geno wasn't ready to quarterback in the NFL. He had really slipped his senior year at West Virginia, and it just didn't correlate well into the NFL. And then drafting Christian Hackenberg with the second round pick in 2015, everyone thought that he was going to be 2016. Everyone thought that he was going to be an eventual starter, and he didn't pan out either. So the Jets historically have not done well with drafting quarterbacks or with giving a young quarterback the keys to the offense, so to speak.
So what is the key to this one being different than all the past quarterbacks the Jets have had?
Well, I think Darnold's got really specific traits. I mean, you look at it, he's got a rocket for an arm. He's got quick, nimble feet, so he's able to get out of the pocket and make plays. If you saw him play in the preseason, there were a number of times, and this is what scares me too, is because the Jets' offensive line can have Civ-like qualities. I mean, if you look at everyone they're on offensive line, they probably are in the from 20 to 30 ranked as far as the offensive line, especially in pass protection. So in the preseason, you saw a couple examples of Darnold being rushed and almost looking like he was going to be sacked, but being able to move out of the pocket and get away and kind of keep the play alive. His ability to do that, kind of like, Aaron Rodgers is so great when he gets out of the pocket, probably the best quarterback I've ever seen at making plays out of the pocket. Darnold has that ability. The Jets also are going to use him in a lot of plays where he's on the move and he can escape the pocket normally. So I think his arm strength it's a big thing to take advantage there. And also, he doesn't really seem like he has too much pressure. And New York is definitely an environment which can eat you alive. Like it did Neil O'Donnell and. Even to a certain point, when Boomer Esiason came, he was a little bit different of a quarterback, but Boomer never made it to the playoffs as a Jets quarterback. There have been a lot of quarterbacks that have come into New York with abilities that weren't able to make it here. But when you look at Darnold, he seems to not be bothered by that, and that's a huge, huge thing. If he can get around that, and not be, like Eli Manning. Eli Manning, you don't know what he's thinking from 1 second to the next, whether he's throwing a game-winning touchdown or whether he's threw a horrific interception. He has the same look on his face. And for a long time, Giant fans were bewildered by it, but then when he won 2 Super Bowls, they kind of realized that it was a look of confidence. And I think if Darnold can have that type of reaction to the mistakes he's going to make, because he is going to make mistakes, and there is going to be a time where Jet fans aren't going to be happy with him, and the media is going to get on him. It's going to happen. How he handles that and how he's able to overcome adversity, that's going to go a long way to determining his success with the Jets.
Yes, that's huge in the New York market, is being able to get yourself away from all the white noise around you. And Sam Darnold seems like he has that personality where he'll be able to block out the noise. Of course, him being young, he's going to hear it. And hopefully some of those veterans on that team will be able to help him through the times when it does get to him. Now, this year has been very different for the Jets. Usually the Jets are looking for one quarterback. And at the beginning of this year, they had three, you could say, starting quality quarterbacks. And they decided to trade away Teddy Bridgewater to my New Orleans Saints, like I mentioned earlier. What are your thoughts on that trade from the Jets side?
Well, I tell you what, I was a little disappointed they didn't hold on to him longer because if you look like what the Eagles did when they got Sam Bradford, I mean they had to give up a couple first round picks, to get him. So if the Jets could have held on to him maybe a little bit longer, you don't know what major quarterback would have went down in the first week. Maybe the Jets could have parlayed that into a first round pick. Yeah, that was my only kind of disappointment, is that if Bridgewater is really going to be this good, giving him away for a third rounder, especially to a team like the Saints, which has probably the best quarterback, most prolific quarterback as far as passing numbers in the NFL, is Drew Brees. They don't really. He's just kind of there as insurance. So if I'm the Saints, I'm thinking, why would I give up a third round pick for insurance when Brees hardly ever gets hurt, and he's really not going to be used there? But I would have rather the Jets hold on to him for a little bit longer. Maybe they could have held on to him for the first week. I mean, they knew he wasn't going to overall be in their plans, so I was a little disappointed that they didn't get more, because they definitely need more. And a third round pick isn't bad. I mean, basically they took a $5 million waiver on a guy, and they were able to turn him into a third round pick. The other thing, though, is that if Darnold is not ready, and if he really craps the bed the first couple starts, I think the Jets are going to stay with him. But having a guy like Bridgewater there might have been a little bit easier for him not to feel as much pressure. But as we said, if he's not good with feeling pressure, he's not going to make it anyway. So they still got McCown there, but McCown isn't anything but a guy that has experience and knows the offense, and maybe can come in at the end of a game or at halftime and lead you for half a game or one or two games. But he's not definitely a guy that you're going to depend for any number of games. They just signed Davis Webb. They put him on the practice squad, so that's probably a good move for them too. Maybe he can develop into the third quarterback. But if you ask me about Bridgewater. The debate for Bridgewater when he was a quarterback for the Vikings was still up in the air. There were some guys who didn't think Bridgewater was good enough even then when he was leading the Vikings to the playoffs. I think that you're seeing him come back and hearing what doctors saying about him and how well his knee has recovered. There's definitely a market for him, and he can definitely be useful to some team out there. I just wish it would have been for a higher. I mean, what do you think? Don't you think they could have gotten a little bit higher of a price tag if they held on to him a little longer?
I think so, especially if he would have played. Say you start Bridgewater weeks 1 and 2, and he plays pretty well. Even if you guys lose, and he looks good in those first 2 games, then that price goes up. Maybe you get a second round or maybe even a first round if he looks really good. So trading him before you see him in real action definitely narrowed his value down. And
I think what they did is they didn't want to risk him maybe getting hurt or something happening to that knee, because they would have played him in the final preseason game to kind of showcase him for other teams. They had done that in the earlier preseason, and he looked pretty good. So maybe they had figured they had showcased him enough. But I think that they clearly did not want him to start the first 2 games because they didn't want any type of controversy. Even if, say, he did play really well, and even if the Jets lost, there still would have been pressure for them to have him continue and not give the role. And then, Darnold would have came in with that much more pressure on him, especially if Bridgewater had done really well. So I think maybe the Jets wanted to avoid all of that and then just get rid of him. But even if they didn't start him, even if they were to just keep him on the roster, I still think that there would have been enough curiosity about him for other teams if they had lost the guy that was their starter. Say for some crazy, say Roethlisberger gets hurt, or say Case Keenum goes down in Denver, or Kirk Cousins goes down in Minnesota, or Alex Smith in Washington, or something, Brian Tannehill again in Miami, something just a key quarterback that goes down. Bridgewater would have been more useful trading him then than he would have been just getting rid of him for a third rounder. But still, getting a third rounder for him is probably more than the Jets thought they would be able to do when they signed him in March.
That's true. Like, coming off that knee injury, we definitely didn't know what his value would be. So seeing him in those couple of preseason games definitely raised his value up to that third-round pick.
Yeah.
Now, being a Saints fan...
What did you think? I mean, did you think he was that good when he was playing back in 2015? Would you give him the label of a franchise quarterback, or do you think he's not at that level?
I think at that time it was to be determined, because he had only been playing, 2 years? So at that time, you're like, okay, we see that he's someone who definitely can be a starter in this league, but can he develop into that franchise guy? And before he got hurt, it seemed like all the buzz that we were hearing was that he was improving. He was turning into what we would see into a franchise guy. And then this preseason, even though he never, it's not real action, we saw some of that potential that they were talking about pre-injury. So I think that he does have the potential to be a franchise guy. And the only thing is, from the Saints side, he only has 1 year left on his deal. Drew Brees still wants to play not only, this year, but next year at the least. So that's my worry, is that him being, a young guy who wants to prove that he's a starter and a franchise guy may not want to wait not only this year, next year. And, we don't know if Drew Brees is going to be on the same, plan as Tom Brady and trying to play till he's 45. So I don't want a Brett Favre type situation. So from the Saints side, do you think the Saints gave up too much in the third round pick for a guy who might leave after this year if he finds out Brees is still trying to play until he's 45?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why the Saints got him. If Brees is their guy, no doubt. I mean, he's single-handedly led them to the postseason just about every season he's been there. I mean, there's 8 times in NFL history someone's passed for 5,000 yards, and Brees has done it 4 of those 8 times. So, we know that Brees can put up numbers. And if you're not going to acquire Bridgewater to have an immediate impact, why are you giving up a third rounder for him? I just don't understand. This didn't make sense to me. And like you said, on a 1-year contract, it's not like they're going to play him. They're planning for the future. It's not like he's going to be their quarterback of the future. It's not like Brees is retiring after this year. So, yeah, I don't know. And then even if he does retire, let's say by some miracle he does retire, okay? That's only going to push Bridgewater's price tag up that much more for the Saints to re-sign him. So, I just don't understand why they of all teams that could have traded for Bridgewater, I was thinking maybe the Raiders or somebody who needed a backup quarterback, and they didn't know what the ability was of their starting quarterback. Because really, if you look at the Eagles, what the Eagles did last year with Foles, I think when that happens, other teams kind of try to repeat it. And, Bridgewater might be the perfect guy to bring in if your starting quarterback gets hurt, and he's going to turn, someone who was a starter, but maybe was forgotten by the NFL, comes back and leads the team to the playoffs and even the Super Bowl. I think Foles created the ability for that to be thought of. We know how rare it is, but once one guy does it, then, you know how it is. Everybody, maybe it can happen for us. So, maybe that was kind of like the momentum that Bridgewater had going into this season. But again, the potential to me is the key word, and I like doing trades on potential when I'm the guy trading, because potential is something that you don't know either way. And Bridgewater has potential to be great, but he also has the potential to be just average. So, and you don't know. And while you're dealing with potential, that to me is the best time to get the most for a player.
No, that's very true. I definitely agree with that. And before we move on to Khalil Mack, I have to put you on the spot. What do you think the record will be for the Jets this year?
Well, okay. Now you're dealing with a guy that understands that the Jets have won the fewest division titles of any team since the merger, okay? 26 teams came into the NFL in 1970, including the original Cleveland Browns. And the Jets have won the fewest division titles of any team with 2.
Wow, that's a great stat.
The only other team that has won less than 4 is the team they're playing on Monday night, which is the Detroit Lions, who have won 3. And the Lions have never had back-to-back seasons of double-digit wins, and they go back to the 30s. So we're dealing with 2 pretty pathetic franchises here. But I wouldn't say that you can Jet fans are psychotic. I mean, and I'm one of them because they're never happy because they've never really experienced success. But yet there are 2 factions of them. One can be unrealistic as far as, oh, we're going to be so awesome, and you can't deal with you can't talk to them in reality because they don't live in reality. Then you have the fans like me who are kind of like always deal with reality and tend to think the worst possible thing, and that's what I'm still, unless I see different. I still wake up and see the sun every morning. I'm expecting to see the same sun every morning. And as far as the Jets are concerned, I'm expecting them to do what they've done every season until I see different. And right now, I don't think they're good enough to be any better than they were last year, unless Darnold is just a second coming, which obviously we don't know. I still think they're probably going to finish between 5-11 and 6-10. The only reason why they would finish with more wins, and I don't see them winning more than 7 games, is because the Dolphins and the Bills are still weak, and maybe the Patriots take a little bit of a step down, but there's just too many holes on this team for them to be considered. I know, Sports Illustrated have them finishing second in the AFC East, and there are some people that even predicted them to make the playoffs. I just don't see how that's possible. Even unless Darnold takes off his uniform and he's got a cape under there, I don't see him having as big an impact as everyone thinks he will. But even saying that, even if he has a positive impact, you're still dealing with a lot of major flaws on his team. They don't have a pass rush. Their running game isn't that strong. Their wide receivers have potential. But again, there's that word potential. They don't have a guy that's gotten over 1,000 yards in a season. So you don't know what. It's not like they're a guarantee. And so I would say that if they don't lose 10 games, that would be a shock to me. So I would say they're either going to be one of 5-11, 6-10, or at best 7-9.
Okay, love the Jets' knowledge there. Now it's time to move on to the Chicago Bears. They made a blockbuster deal this past week where they picked up Khalil Mack. Now, in that trade, they gave the Oakland Raiders 2 first-round picks, so one for 2019, one for 2020. They also gave up a third-round pick in 2020 and a 6th-round pick in 2019. The Oakland Raiders gave up, of course, Khalil Mack, a 2nd-round pick, and a conditional 5th-round pick in 2020. So let's start with the Bears side of the trade. Do you think they gave up too much for Khalil Mack?
Well, I mean, how can you say they did? Because, we're talking about one of the best defensive players in the NFL. We're talking about a game breaker. It's not like they're getting an average player or even just an all-pro. I mean, Mack was the 2016 NFL Defensive Player of the Year. In 3 years, he has over 36 sacks. So he's a game breaker. And you knew the team that was going to get him, if they were going to give up what the Raiders were asking, needed to be in kind of a position where they could win now. Now, I wouldn't say the Bears are the best example of that, but they're definitely better with him than they were without him. Their defense was already good. Now it's going to be, one of the best in the NFL. But really, the question about the Bears isn't their defense; it's whether or not Trubisky can lead them on offense, and that's still a bit of an unknown. But yeah, again, we're talking about giving up 2 first-round picks. Just that alone is a lot. But I've in dealing with this trade, I've seen a lot of people comment on it. And there was a Bears fan who was talking about the fact that it was a bad trade, and unless because the Raiders Well, for the Raiders, but because the first round picks won't pan out to that much because the Bears will be better. Then they won't get a top 10 pick. And I don't necessarily think wherever you draft in the first round, it doesn't matter whether it's top 10 or below. There have been plenty of teams that have a top 10 pick that screw it up. So just having 2 first round picks, as far as the Raiders are concerned, was probably a good move for them. The Bears, can you imagine, like, even if they kept their first round picks, are they really going to draft anybody that's better than Khalil Mack in the next 2 years? You know, it's hard for me to imagine so. And basically, if you're dealing with giving away picks, you give them away because you don't think you need as much depth. Because now teams really draft for, especially in the first 3 rounds, you're hoping to nail first round pick with a superstar, and then second and third round picks are going to be starter to provide depth. The Bears at least find themselves in a position where maybe they don't need as much depth as some teams because they've already built up through the draft the last couple of years. But yeah, I think it could work out for both teams. And but ultimately, the question for the Bears is how Trubisky is going to do in leading them on offense.
Yeah, I'm definitely right there with you on how it can work out for both teams. It definitely depends on what Oakland does with those picks. And the likelihood of you drafting someone who's as good as Khalil Mack is very low. So that's my worry, that no matter how many draft picks you got back, you're very unlikely to get someone as good as Khalil Mack. So from the Raiders side, I just don't understand. I feel like when you have a player of that caliber, you have to pony up and pay. And some people feel like after the Aaron Donald deal got done, that even further scared Oakland to make this deal because they knew how much the price tag was going to be. End up being $90 million guarantee for Khalil Mack with the Bears. Do you think that Oakland did the right move of avoiding that big time payday and getting rid of Khalil Mack?
Yeah, well, I mean, not having a hand in the deal because I'm not a Raiders fan. I could see where Raiders fans would be frustrated with it. It's kind of like how I felt when the Jets gave up Keyshawn Johnson. They gave him up at the end of the '99 season, and they wound up getting 2 first-round draft picks for him. Losing one of the best wide receivers for a team that, in my opinion, was ready to win then. The Jets in 2000 were ready to win. Maybe wasn't the best thing, but when you look at the Raiders, they just signed Derek Carr. They're going to have a couple other contracts coming up in the next couple years. Amari Cooper is going to be up for a big contract. You don't know how much money you're going to have available each year on the cap, and really their defense during the preseason, I mean, they had the 3rd most sacks of any team in the preseason. Not that the preseason matter. I mean, you're going up against guys that are going to be washing cars, but still, their defense wasn't that bad. And even though Mack, is an elite player, you're still getting back quite a bit here that you can take going into the next couple seasons. And really, what do you want? Do you want a guy who's going to cap out after 3 years? Mack's already 27. Defensive players really don't show much as far as consistency beyond like 31, 32. So maybe there's like a 4 or 5 year window. Now you get draft picks. Now you get to add to what Gruden is trying to build there. So I could see why the Raiders did that. And I did think the Raiders season is going to come down to how David Carr does. How Derek Carr does. I'm getting mixed up with his brother. How Derek Carr does, not necessarily depending on whether or not Mack is there. Because even if Mack was there and Carr has a bad year, the Raiders aren't going to be as good. So I think that's what the Raiders decided, is that this was Carr's team, and they were going to rebuild or add pieces in the next couple of years through the draft to where they weren't cash-strapped, they weren't restricted by the salary cap, and I think that's what the deal has enabled them to do.
I think with this deal, they're pretty much saying we're waiting for Vegas. We're not going to be the team that that you guys, the fans, want us to be this year. We gave John Gruden a 10-year contract, so we're going to give him time to make this team exactly how he wants it, and we want to use the money that we would spend on Mack on other positions. Like you mentioned Amari Cooper, who Amari Cooper hasn't really proved himself to be someone who's going to be worth a big wide receiver contract soon. Like this year is really big for him. So I don't know if that money's going to go towards him or other pieces. But I think this year is going to be a transition year for the Raiders, and this trade even solidified that even more, that we're looking towards the future. And this year we might show some flashes, but it's not going to be a playoff year for us. Do you think I'm crazy by saying that?
For the Raiders?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at the West. You know, you have Kansas City, which has a first-year quarterback, or not a first-year quarterback, but a rookie quarterback, in all essence, in Mahomes. I think that's going to be an unknown for them. So, the Chiefs aren't necessarily going to run away with the West. The Chargers, are always going to be a team to contend with, but there's a lot of inconsistency with the Chargers over the years. And then the Broncos, who knows how Case Keenum's going to do, and the Broncos are just as unknown as anyone else. So the Raiders have just as good a chance to win that division and to make a name for themselves. So to me, it's not any kind of a stretch at all to say they could win a division and make the playoffs. Are they going to be as good as they were a couple years ago when it looked like they could have challenged the Patriots for the AFC before Carr got hurt? I don't know if they're going to be that good. But I still see them definitely good enough to win the AFC East. I mean, I don't see the Chargers, or especially the Chiefs or the Broncos, as that much better than them at all, if they are better than them. So, I think the Raiders are still right in there, and I think this kind of gives Gruden the team he wants to have, because really it's all about Gruden now. You give him 10 years, he's the face of the franchise, and I think he now gets to build the team the way he wants to.
I definitely agree with that last part that is about Gruden. I disagree that the Raiders have a good chance, because I do think that the Chargers, who last year, when you look at their stats, had a team that fit the bill of a contender. They just made a lot of mistakes special teams-wise, a lot of missed kicks, punts getting blocked, a lot of things that should be mitigated this year. I think the Chargers...
Okay, but you say that, but when have the Chargers really been able to capitalize on those things? The Chargers historically are a team that makes a lot of mistakes. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs they've only made playoffs once since 2010. They made it in 2013. So historically, the Chargers are an inconsistent team. They do things that cost them games historically over the last couple of years. So, again, until they stop doing that, I don't see there's any reason for you to think that they're going to do any different. Every year the Chargers are supposed to have a team that's going to go to the Super Bowl, or every year this is going to be their year, and it never works out. So, I don't see that as being something that can be counted on. The Chargers are a team that you don't know what you're going to get when the season starts. They could be good, and they could be bad, and then they'll look good, then they'll look horrible. So until they develop that consistency, I don't really think there's a reason for anybody to say, well, I think this is a year they're definitely going to break out of that, because until I see it, I'm used to seeing what the Chargers do every year.
That's a very good point. They do have the tendency to beat themselves. They have the talent.
Again, we're talking about a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs since 2013.
That's a very good point. Like I said, they have the talent. They have the most talent in the division, I believe, by far. But like you said, talent can only bring you so far if you're going to beat yourself. So that's a very good point.
Yeah.
So it'll be an interesting division. I think it's the most interesting division. I think the NFC South is the best division, but I think this division is the most interesting and unpredictable this year. So,
yeah, I would say it's the most unpredictable, because you can make a case for all four teams winning the division. The NFC East is another division that's really interesting, with the Giants and the Cowboys and the Eagles. The Redskins I don't think are going to be in the mix, but maybe they will with Alex Smith. But you can definitely look at that division and say, wow, there's the Eagles aren't a shoe-in to win a division. The West, because of the unknown with the young quarterbacks, it becomes in play to where it's hard to say which team is definitely going to win a division.
Yes, very, very true when it comes to all those points. Let's now get into NFL Week 1. So opening night is Thursday. We have the Atlanta Falcons visiting the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 1.5-point favorites going into this game. Nick Foles will be the starter. Carson Wentz has not been cleared yet. So let's start with the Eagles. What are you looking for the Eagles, from the Eagles, to see if they're back to that Super Bowl form of last year? What is it that in this game that you'll be trying to, pay attention to?
Well, I think the Eagles kind of caught everybody by surprise last year. I mean, you look at the regular season they had, even getting into the playoffs, people thought that they weren't going to make the Super Bowl. They thought that the Falcons could beat them. They didn't. People kind of underestimated the Eagles all year. But now they have, a number of injuries they're dealing with. They're not as strong as they were at the end of the year last year. And they get the showcase game against the Falcons, who, to me, are a big contender in the NFC. Their offense, they drafted Calvin Ridley. They already had a dynamic offense, so he just gives them one more weapon to worry about. But if you look at the playoff game last year, the Eagles really did a great job on getting the Falcons off the field on third down. And they mixed up a lot of their coverages, and they confused Matt Ryan all game long. But you look at the end of the game, and they still had a chance. The Falcons still had a chance to win that game, And if Jones doesn't slip on the final play as he's trying to make his cut, as Matt Ryan's trying to get him the ball, who's to say that the Eagles don't lose that game? They don't have Carson Wentz. They're going with Fales, who was everybody's darling last year. And to me, the Eagles will because they won the Super Bowl. It's expectations for them are going to be impossible. And Eagles fans are brutal to begin with. So I think that this will be a bad start for them because the Falcons are an elite team. And if you ask me, the Falcons should be one of the favorites to get back to the Super Bowl. So I would say that maybe this isn't the best opening game for them. You look at the history. The Falcons hosted the Eagles in the first week back in 2015 and beat them. A different Eagles team, but they still have Matt Ryan. The Eagles do. The Falcons do. So the Falcons still have a lot of the weapons that they had back then. And I just don't see the Eagles, because of the injuries they're dealing with, and if they're not going to have their full roster out there for Week 1, that the Falcons will be able to beat them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I have the Falcons winning. If I had to give a score, I would go a close game. I'll go 24-21 Falcons winning this matchup. Don't like what I've seen from Foles in the preseason, even though it's preseason. Don't like what I've seen. I think that a little Super Bowl hangover will be there Week 1, so I got the Falcons winning this one. And for the Falcons, I'm looking to see how they do in the second year with this offensive coordinator, seeing if maybe they get those kinks that they had last year out of their system and get back to being an elite offensive team.
Right. I gotta apologize. It's Foles. I keep calling him Fales. It's Foles. My bad.
No problem. And for the first matchup on Sunday, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers visiting the Cleveland Browns. Pittsburgh is a 4.5-point favorite. Who do you have in this matchup?
Well, I think the Browns have a lot of interesting things to, now because they were on Hard Knocks, and if you look at what happened to Michael Kendricks, you hear what happened to him?
Yeah, it's nuts. Like the insider trading stuff, him getting cut.
Yeah. Right. I mean, is that so typical Cleveland?
It is definitely a typical thing to have to Brown.
Right. I mean, it's perfect. Spend big money on a free agent that won a Super Bowl with Philly. He's trying to be a veteran presence on a defense on a team that's won one game over the last 2 years, and he winds up being arrested for insider trading or indicted on insider trading. I mean, how perfect can you get if you're Cleveland? Saying that, I was surprised that the Bills gave away Tyrod Taylor. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. He got them to the playoffs last year. You saw how bad the Bills were when he wasn't there. To me, it made no sense why they would give him up. So I think Cleveland's going to be better. But again, they're playing the Steelers, who are, in my opinion, the best team in that division. And the Steelers and Browns go back and forth as far as the rivalry. They both hate each other. but Roethlisberger has historically done well there against the Browns, and I think that's probably what will continue to happen.
Yeah, one interesting stat is that Ben Roethlisberger has the most wins at the Cleveland Browns home stadium since they've been there since 1999, more than any Cleveland quarterback.
More than Cleveland, yeah.
So that's amazing. I think that continues. Cleveland will be better this year, but not good enough to beat Pittsburgh week 1. For the next matchup, we have the San Francisco 49ers going against Minnesota in Minnesota. The Vikings are 6-point favorites in this matchup. How do you see this matchup going?
Well, the Niners have, Garoppolo. People are wondering what kind of quarterback he's going to be. I mean, he really has some people thinking he is going to be a legit franchise quarterback, and he hasn't lost yet, so it's not like you can argue with them. The Vikings, their defense is awesome. They came within a game of the Super Bowl last year before they got blown out by the Eagles, and I thought that surprised me how easily the Eagles defeated them. I think you remember how the Vikings won their divisional round playoff game, don't you?
Yeah, definitely do. It still hurts that they, for people who don't remember, he's referencing the miracle in Minnesota against the Saints in the divisional round.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that to you, but I think with Kirk Cousins at the helm, I think Minnesota is going to be another team that along with Green Bay can really fight for the NFC North, and I don't see really any reason why the Vikings should take a step back. I think Cousins is better, even though Case Keenum had a good year last year. I still think that he's a better quarterback. You look at what he's done when he's in Washington, throwing for 30 touchdowns the last couple of years. So. For over 4,000 yards. So, and now the Niners, their defense has improved, but I'm curious to see how Garoppolo does, because he has this kind of aura about him that he can be such a great quarterback, and he hasn't really shown that he's done anything wrong yet. So now that a new season starts, he's going to be looked at a different way. He's not playing for a 3-11 team anymore, or a team that's their season is done and he can come in and pretty much no one's really going to notice what he does. Now a lot of pressure will be on him, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. I still think the Vikings are better than the 49ers, and they'll come out with like a 4-point win.
Yeah, I definitely believe Minnesota's going to win this game. It is very interesting to see how Jimmy G plays against a defense like Minnesota. He saw some good defenses last year. Jacksonville comes to mind. But it was at a time where, like you said, they're catching people off guard. No one had tape on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be different this year. Everybody's ready for him. And with Minnesota, that's a great test week 1. That's an awesome test to see if he's really the real deal. He's getting paid like the real deal. So he definitely has to live up to that contract as well. So there's going to be a lot of pressure this year on Jimmy G. He's already out becoming a celebrity quarterback. He's dating adult film stars. So he's out here living the celebrity life of the quarterback. He has to live up to it now. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting.
What?
Say it one more time.
He's dating adult film stars?
Yeah, that was a big thing a few weeks ago. Yeah, he was seen out in public with an adult film star.
My gosh.
Yeah, like a Beverly Hills hotel, something like that. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
So he's definitely living the celebrity quarterback life already. So we'll see if that gets to him, or if he's already ready to live up to expectations against number 1 ranked defense from last year in the Vikings. All right.
Yep.
For the next matchup, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Colts. Now this is a matchup that probably not a lot of people are going to watch, but we have the Colts as 3-point favorites in this one. It's going to be very interesting to see if Andrew Luck is fully back. If he's going to be back to the Andrew Luck who led the Colts to 3 straight 11-5 records, or if he still has some time to recover. So what are you expecting to see in this matchup?
Well, I think you remember how the Bengals were the first couple years under Dalton. They made the playoffs the first 5 years, and they did not win a game. They've suffered losing seasons the last couple years, so they're not as strong as they once were. But I still think I still think Dalton. He's not a bad quarterback, and he's capable of beating you. And Luck, being in his first game back, you really don't know what is coming, even though we're used to seeing an Andrew Luck that is effective. But this, to me, is one of the most interesting games of Week 1 because of the teams. Because the Bengals at one point were a perennial playoff team, and now they're trying to get back to that. But they still have players that are capable of performing. And you look at the Colts, and Andrew Luck people have been waiting for him to come back, and they didn't know whether he was going to play last year, and that was a big to-do last year about if he's going to be able to play again. But so now he gets his chance, and I don't know if he's going to be the same guy they saw when they were winning the divisions, going 11-5 for 3 straight years. But it'll be interesting to see exactly what level he's at now, and if he is at kind of close to the level that he was at before, then the Colts will be a contender in that division. But if not, if he's kind of mediocre and needs a year kind of to get his feet back, so to speak, then Indianapolis is probably going to be between 5-11 and 6-10. But I think for this week, this is a tough game because I could see reasons for both teams winning and both teams losing, but I would pick the Bengals to win only because I believe a little bit more in Andy Dalton than I do in Andrew Luck for Week 1. Not that if you ask me the same question in Week 10, I'd probably say something different. But for Week 1, I still don't know, and I'm not confident in what I'm going to see out of Luck.
I'm right there with you. I have no idea what we're going to see from Luck. I really don't have any idea about the Bengals. It's crazy. Andy Dalton is more beloved in Buffalo than he is in Cincinnati.
Right.
So we have no idea what we're going to see from either team. Hopefully we see the old Andrew Luck, but we don't know. So that's why I think the line's at 3 points because, the team at home with a game that you don't really know who's going to win, the home team's going to get that 3-point cushion as far as the gambling goes. And that lets you know that none of us have an idea of what's going to happen in this game. But I'm going to go with the Bengals in a close one. For the next matchup, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are 7-point favorites in this matchup. And the Buffalo Bills will be led by Nathan Peterman. He was named the starter this week for the Buffalo Bills. Let's start with that. Were you surprised by that decision to start Peterman?
Well, yeah. I mean, they made the trade, or they signed, McCarron in the offseason, and then, he gets injured, and they wound up trading him to the Raiders. And then, Peterman, the last time people saw Peterman, he was throwing 5 picks in the first half. So, and again, I'm still confused why they got rid of Tyrod Taylor in the first place, why he's not their starting quarterback. But, they drafted Josh Allen. People thought that, he was going to be good enough to be the starter, and for whatever reason, he wasn't. I thought he played pretty well in preseason, at least, definitely better than Peterman did. So, it's a little bit confusing to me as why he's playing in Week 1. But because of that, and because he's going up against a Ravens team, which can make quarterbacks look really bad, and they're playing at Baltimore, I think that this will be a pretty rough week for Buffalo fans having to experience that. Not that the Ravens are a dynamic team, but definitely they can give problems to quarterbacks that aren't used to seeing an aggressive defense, and the Ravens still can get after you.
That's part of the reason I think they started Peterman is that they didn't want Allen going into that fire Week 1. And
but how is it any better with I mean, Peterman, he's shown that he can't. You don't know what you're gonna. If you're gonna get anything, you get something bad. So why not at least give it to the rookie who let him get the bad games out of the way if you really believe in him. I mean, what is starting Peterman going to do? I mean, stopgap at best. I mean, normally stopgap guys are guys that give you a chance to win. I don't think he gives them much of a chance to win.
That's a very good point. I definitely agree with you. I'm just trying to think of it from their perspective of maybe they were like, okay, we don't want to crush, Allen's confidence this early. Maybe we want to work with him a little more, give him a few more weeks, because he's definitely going to start eventually. If it's not Week 3, then I think at the latest, like Week 6, Week 7 at the latest, we'll see Allen out there. So maybe they just want to build up his confidence a little bit more.
But again, if that's the case, why did they get rid of Taylor? I mean, Taylor was good. He was perfect for them. Why get rid of him?
I agree.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Tyrod led you to the playoffs for the first time this century, and you get rid of him.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you there. They shouldn't have got rid of Tyrod, and it's just a boggling decision. But I definitely agree with you on the game as well. I got Baltimore winning probably by like 14 points. Now for our next matchup, it's very interesting. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars going to New York to play against the Giants. And on the road, the Jaguars are 3-point favorites. And of course, the matchup that everybody's going to be looking forward to in this one is Odell Beckham versus Jalen Ramsey. Both of these guys very outspoken. Jalen's been extremely outspoken this offseason, talking trash about different quarterbacks, different teams. So it should be an exciting matchup just from an anticipation standpoint. What do you guys expect in this matchup?
What do they deem this, the Tom Coughlin Bowl? I think that the Ravens are going to be, the Jaguars are going to be probably one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Giants are picked by some people to win the NFC East, but they're a big unknown going into the season because you don't know how their offensive line is going to do, and you don't know what you're going to get out of Barkley. He hasn't played all preseason, and even Beckham, as great as he is, there's still an unknown quality about that. Now, this matchup is going to be interesting because I remember what it was like when Beckham took on Josh Norman for the Panthers. And I don't know if you remember that game at all, but that was a crazy, crazy game because the Giants were down 35-0 in that game, and they actually came back to tie the game on a touchdown catch by Beckham, and then they wound up losing, I think, 38-35. But that was just, with the fight and everything in that game, that was an amazing game. So if it's anything like that with these two guys, because Ramsey is a bit of a head case, and so is Beckham, and so that's going to be really interesting to see.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to that matchup. I have the Jaguars winning a close one. I'm very excited to see the Giants, but like you said, there's a lot of unknowns with the Giants. Has their offensive line improved enough? Is Eli still good enough to lead a team to the playoffs?
What do you think of Eli? I mean, Eli to me is the ultimate unknown. I mean, Eli can look, his whole career he's been inconsistent. The fact that he's won 2 Super Bowls, to me, is a great indicator of his talent. But there are times where Eli looks so bad, you're wondering what the heck is wrong with him. Like, almost like he plays bad on purpose because you've been used to him seeing make good plays, especially when the game is on the line. I mean, there was a period for about 2-3 years where, any time the Giants needed a game-winning drive, they got it from Eli. So I still think he's good enough to win, but he's the ultimate unknown. I swear, Eli is the ultimate unknown. From week to week, you don't know. From pass to pass, you don't know what he's going to do. And I could definitely see the Giants winning this game, but it's going to be big. But if we see the good Eli, if we see the inconsistent Eli, Jacksonville's good enough to pressure him into mistakes, and their defense is good enough to be the difference in the game.
Yeah, you can say that with both quarterbacks in this game. Do we see the Blake Bortles that we saw a little bit in the playoffs, the guy you can depend on to be at least consistent, or is it going to go back to being the bad Blake Bortles we saw for the first 3 years of his career? With Eli, I've always called Eli the best average quarterback of all time. Most of his career, he's been mediocre. He's had years where he's led the league in interceptions. He had 1 year where he threw 27, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then like you said, you have those moments where he pulls something, out of his backside. You're like, how did Eli do this? He has these great moments. But like I said, because he's been average to below average for most of his career, and he's had those 2 great playoff runs, people, especially Giants fans, think of him as great. When he's definitely not a great quarterback. He's kind of like, you mentioned Joe Namath earlier. He's kind of like the Joe Namath of our era. When you think about his stats.
I think he's better than Joe Namath. I mean, to me, Eli is perfect, perfectly described in that game against the Panthers a couple years ago. Because like I said, Giants were down 35-0, then they had cut it to 35-14, and Eli's driving them down again for a score. It looks like the Giants get all the momentum, and they'll be down by only 2 scores. And then Eli throws just a horrible, horrible pick in the end zone. Like, just a pass he never should have thrown. So all the momentum is dead. It looks like the Giants are dead. Then the Giants create a turnover, and then Eli's back throwing touchdowns. The next, right? It's like, then he leads them back to score 3 more touchdowns to tie the game. So that, to me, is perfect Eli. You're ready to kick your foot through the set because he throws a pass that you're like, what in God's name is he looking at? And then and comes back out, and then all of a sudden he's throwing touchdowns. But he still has been good enough to win 2 Super Bowls and to beat Brady twice. That is an achievement. I don't care what anybody says. There's no way you can, oh, well, that's good. There's no way you can sugarcoat that. He's done it twice. It's not like he just did it once. So the guy's proven that he can win. He's proven he can win 2 Super Bowls. Only a handful of guys that have done that. So Eli really doesn't have to prove anything anymore to anybody. To me, he should be a Hall of Famer. To me, you look at where he ranks overall. He's in the top, top 5, top 6 in all-time passing yards and touchdowns and everything. So, he's put together an incredible career. So, to me, he's a Hall of Famer.
I think he will get in the Hall of Fame. For me, I would say borderline Hall of Famer just because of the inconsistency. But like you said, he does have those 2 Super Bowls where he was very, like I said, instrumental in those runs because he had great playoff runs. I do believe his playoff stats can be a little overrated because outside of those 2 years, he hasn't won in the playoffs. So you still have those 2 years.
Yeah, but that's outside of those 2 years. Outside of those, he won 2 Super Bowls, so you can't just dismiss that.
I'm definitely not dismissing it. Like, it's awesome. Like, it's definitely awesome stat. It's something that he's going to go down in history for, those 2 Super Bowls. But also, we can't just, if your career he's been in the league how many years now? And he has those 2 playoff runs.
2005.
Yeah, so he has those 2 playoff runs and so many other years where he just didn't live up to expectations. We can't forget about those other years because of those 2 years either.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's a total enigma.
Yeah, definitely. He's like he's the ultimate roller coaster like you described.
Right.
So for the next matchup, we have Tampa Bay Buccaneers going against the New Orleans Saints. Who that said they're going to beat those Saints? The Saints are 9.5-point favorites in this one. The Bucs, just everything points to them being bad this year. You got Jameis Winston going to be out for this game and 2 more because of his suspension. What happened with him and the Uber driver. So you're going to have Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Harvard grad, famously starting in this game. The Saints, for everything points to them being great. Scares me a little bit because there's no pushback this year. Usually there is skepticism about the defense or about something, and this year everybody's saying that we're going to be good. So it scares me a little bit as a fan that we don't have anything to point to be like, okay, maybe we won't do this. So everything says we should be a contender this year. What are you expecting in this matchup?
Well, I think the Buccaneers are, like you said, because Winston's not starting and Fitzpatrick, his whole career has been up and down, so I don't expect them to go anywhere. And even when they get Winston back, I'm not sure they're good enough to be a contender in the South. When you look at the Saints and the Falcons, and the Panthers, to me, are all clearly better than them. So if the Saints are going to be the team that people are saying are going to be this year, they need to win this game by at least 10 points.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you there. The Saints, this is a great opening week for them, an opening week matchup. You definitely can't take them lightly. The Bucs still have talent. You think about Mike Evans, think about McCoy on the defensive side. They still have a lot of talent there, but they have coaching staff that hasn't looked the greatest. Just a lot of problems. Dirk Cutter was my pick for first coach fired this year, so I'm not expecting much from them at all. For the next matchup, we have a very interesting one as the Houston Texans go up to New England to face the Patriots. The Patriots are 6.5-point favorites against the Texans. They got Deshaun Watson back, J.J. Watt back. They should be good with all the talent they have. There are questions about the offensive line, though. Patriots, not that deep a wide receiver this year. Chris Hogan looks to be the main guy, at least for the first 4 games until Edelman comes back. And, of course, you still have Gronk at tight end. So a very interesting matchup there. What are you expecting in this matchup?
Well, you remember the game they played last year where Brady threw the game-winning touchdown with 20 seconds left.
Yeah, it was an awesome game.
And Watson was in the middle of his, throwing 19 touchdown passes in 6 starts. So I can't wait to watch this game. People talk about the Patriots as waiting for them to take a step down. You look at Brady last year at age 40, throwing for more touchdown passes at age 40 than anybody in the history of the NFL in their 40s. For one season. So people wonder if Brady's going to take a step back. And to me, I've only seen Brady get better and better and better. So until, again, like you said with the Jets and with a couple other things that we talked like the Chargers, until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. And Brady, to me, is still not only the greatest quarterback, I think, that's ever played, but could be the greatest athlete to ever play any sport. you ask me. He's right up there with Jordan and Gretzky as far as greatness, who their careers certainly didn't go into their 40s. Gretzky really stopped becoming the great player he was at age 33, where he was kind of mediocre after that. And Jordan, when he came back with the Bullets, was still good, but not Jordan from age 38 and age 39. Brady, you look at him at age 30, he wasn't as good as he was at 39 and 40. So, to me, that just indicates the greatness of him. And until he starts to lose, and until he starts to throw picks, I mean, you look at the guy doesn't even throw interceptions anymore. I think the Patriots are going to be the Patriots until I see different. And this is going to be a game that's going to be great to watch because so many people are looking at Watson to continue the success he had last year. People forget how good he was before he got hurt. 19 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, and the Texans' offense was dynamic when he was there. That's something I'll be very excited to see. But I don't see the Texans historically don't win in New England, so I'm going to pick the Patriots to beat them in Week 1. I mean, if the Texans beat them, that'll be a huge thing for them that they've kind of like a bridge they've crossed. Not only to beat the best team that everybody says in the AFC, but you're beating them on a road, and you're showing people that Deshaun Watson is back. And he can be counted on. So if he has a good game and Texans win, that's going to be huge for Houston going forward.
I definitely agree with that. It'll be huge if Houston wins, and I'm going with the upset. I'm going with the Texans to beat the Patriots in this game, and my prediction is all the talking heads on the big networks are going to go crazy. Oh, the Patriots done? What's going on this year? And they're going to do the normal overreaction of Week 1. I think the Texans will win just behind the excitement of having Deshaun Watson back. DeAndre Hopkins should have a huge game in this one. Lamar Miller as well with some of the read option things they could do with Deshaun Watson. I don't really believe in the Patriots defense as being able to stop. They'll be able to force turnovers. They're always good at that, but they won't be able to stop this team. Just like last year, they'll have a shootout, but I had the Texans coming out on top in the shootout this year. For the next matchup, we have the Tennessee Titans at the Miami Dolphins. The Titans are always a team to me. I just don't know how to read them. Last year, I didn't really think they were that good, even though they made the playoffs. But they proved me wrong and did win their first playoff game against the Chiefs in a great comeback. In Miami this year, getting Tannehill back, but they lost basically their two best players. You lost Ndamukong Suh and Jarvis Landry, your two most talented players. So I'm not expecting much from them. What do you see in this matchup?
The Dolphins, historically, you don't know what you're going to get from them year after year. They made the playoffs 2 years ago. Then last year, Tannehill got injured, and they took a step back. They're not supposed to be one of the, not much is expected of them, in the AFC East this year. So the fact that they're at home, maybe they have a little bit of an advantage. But you look at the Titans. I remember their playoff victory over Kansas City, where they were down 21-3, where kind of Mariota, kind of took the next step in his career. I think they have a great running game, and they're better almost all across the board than the Dolphins are. So despite being on the road, I would say that Tennessee is going to win.
Yeah, I got Tennessee winning as well. Let's try to hurry up through these picks here. I know I've been having you on the phone for a while here. For the next matchup, we'll start in the afternoon matchups here on Sunday. We have Kansas City versus the Los Angeles Chargers. We talked about this division a little bit earlier. Should be very interesting this year. And the Chargers are 3.5-point favorites at home. How do you see this matchup?
Well, again, if like we were saying, if the Chargers are going to be the team to make any kind of noise in the AFC West, they got to win this game. They got to win at home against a division opponent that they should be better than.
Definitely. I have the Chargers winning this one, especially in Mahomes' first start. I can see him having some hiccups in his first start here. Well, I think he did start a game last year, but his first time being like the full-time starter. So I have the Chargers winning in a close one. For the next matchup, we have the Seahawks at the Broncos. Another interesting matchup as the Seahawks are not the team that we grew accustomed to over the past few years. I've joked that the Legion of Boom is now the Legion of Whom, because we don't know who is back there playing defense for them now.
Yeah.
So
That's good. I like that.
So in this matchup, what are you expecting?
Well, the Broncos, again, two unknowns. The Broncos, you don't know what you're going to get out of Keenum, even though you saw great things out of him last year. The Seahawks, to me, are more of a known. They still got Russell Wilson. They're still, to me, as long as you have him, the Seahawks are better than most of the quarterbacks that they're going to see. Despite all of the players they lost, despite their losses on defense, I would still take the Seahawks, despite the fact that they're on the road.
Yeah, I definitely can see this one could go either way. It definitely depends on how Case Keenum plays. Denver, will their defense be back to being elite when you think about Von Miller? And I'm really excited to see Bradley Chubb, if he's going to be dynamic. Yeah. If those two guys are both dynamic and off the ends, that could be horrible for Seattle, whose offensive line has still not been improved. When you've seen Wilson running for his life all last year, and they still didn't correct that. So this game could go either way. I'm going to go with the Seahawks in a close one, though. For the next matchup, another interesting one, we have the Cowboys at the Panthers. The Panthers are 3-point favorites at home. How do you see this matchup?
Well, here are two teams that you really don't know what you get. The Panthers, 2 years ago won 15 games. Last year they took a step back. The Cowboys were, they had Elliott and Prescott break out 2 years ago. Last year they took a step back as well. The Cowboys still have one of the best offensive lines. They have Elliott back for a full season. I expect them to be players in the NFC this year. And the Panthers, I expect to be better and players in the NFC West. Saying that, I think because the Panthers are at home, I'll give them the advantage for this week. But I would still say the Cowboys are going to be a team to be reckoned with in the NFC.
Okay. I got the Panthers in this one because I believe their defense will be able to shut down the Cowboys. Just because we don't know who Prescott has to throw the ball to. No Witten, no Dez. So you have a lot of young weapons. Of course, Ezekiel is going to be a monster. But now you have to stack that box. So Dak is really going to be asked to do a lot this year. And I'm not saying he's not capable of it, but we have to see. Against that Panthers defense, I can see Luke Kuechly getting a few picks, maybe 2 in this game, just because, Dak's going to be asked to do more. So I got the Panthers winning this one, I would say about 6 points. For the next matchup,
if the Cowboys can still run the ball, they're going to be good, and then Prescott will be able to play action. So that to me is the biggest factor. Even though they don't have many of their wide receivers, their biggest strength was always running the ball, and they got a great offensive line. And to me, I think that still matters. So if they can still run the ball, the Cowboys are going to be good.
Definitely, if that running game is still there, they'll still be very viable, especially in the NFC East this year. For the next matchup we have, speaking of the NFC East, we have the Washington Redskins going to Arizona, playing the Cardinals. And the Cardinals are only 1-point favorite. On this matchup, I really don't know where to go in this one. Arizona's unknown with Sam Bradford. Of course, David Johnson is back, so a lot depends on him. If he's healthy and good to go and get you those yards, it takes a lot of pressure off of Bradford. With Washington, we got Alex Smith. I don't like his weapons. Jordan Reed, of course, is really good when he's healthy. But it's a very interesting matchup because it's so much unknown amongst both of these teams. How do you see this matchup going?
Right. Yeah, well, I think both teams will be good enough to finish, third or fourth in their division. The Cardinals historically, have been better the last couple of years, but without Palmer, you look at how they played without Palmer the last couple of years, they were never any good. I don't know if Bradford's the answer for them. And then the Redskins with Alex Smith. Smith has been a good quarterback the last couple of years, but he hasn't been able to win in the playoffs. So I think that he makes them better in this game, and the Redskins, I think, will win even though they're on the road.
Okay, I definitely could see Washington winning this game as well. You're going to have Alex Smith taking care of the ball. I think the Cardinals are going to be dependent on getting turnovers to generate offense for them this year, and they won't get those turnovers against Alex Smith. So I got Washington winning about 3 points, close game. For the Sunday night matchup, we have the Khalil Mack-led Chicago Bears against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are 7.5-point favorites in this one. How do you see this matchup going?
Well, the fact that it's in Green Bay, you have two rivals, probably the most heated rivalry or the longest rivalry in the NFL. I don't think the Bears are good enough to beat Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers still, to me, is the best if not the best, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. People have picked the Packers to be a contender in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl this year. I don't think Trubisky is good enough to lead them to a win in Lambeau Field on opening night against Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. Even with Khalil Mack, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Aaron Rodgers, last week I picked him to be my MVP this year. I think this year he really shows how much he's worth. He showed it last year by not being there. We saw how bad the Packers were.
Right.
I think he's an equivalent of a LeBron James in the NFL. Like, when he's not on your team goes from a contender to not contending at all. So I got Aaron Rodgers leading the Green Bay Packers to an easy victory over the Bears. I am excited to see what the Bears do with their improved offense, if Trubisky can really be that guy. So it's going to be an interesting game to watch, but I got the Packers winning pretty easily. So now let's move on to Monday night. Your New York Jets going to Detroit. Detroit is favored by 6.5. Interesting game. How do you see it?
Well, I think 6.5 is a lot to give Detroit. Historically, the Jets are 0-4 in primetime games to start the season. The last time they did so was in 2010 against Baltimore. You ask me, I'm a fan. I'm always going to want them to win, but I see Detroit probably winning this one in a close one because they have the more experienced quarterback. To me, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Because he's been in Detroit, he hasn't had the consistency that he should have had. I mean, you look at a couple years ago when they were at a big lead on the Packers, and Packers managed to win the division. But I think with experienced Stafford is just better, and he's going to be the difference in this game. I think that it'll be nice to see the Jets get off to a different start with their new quarterback with Darnold, but I don't think this is going to be the game where people see the true Darnold yet. I think it'll get experience. I think it'll be good. But the Lions with Stafford are clearly better right now, and they'll win by at least 3 points. I don't know if it's going to be the 6 that they give them, but it'll probably be between 3 and 6.
I definitely agree with you on this one. I think it'll be a close game, closer than what the odds have made it out to be. The Lions, defensively, very up and down. Offensively, they still don't have a running game. I don't understand. All these years, we've been waiting for them to get like the dynamic running back to add to Stafford, make it easier, maybe get some play action to relieve some pressure off of Stafford. They still have a very good receiving core. Love Golden Tate, Marvin Jones III. So I got the Lions winning this one in a close one. So for the last game of the week, we have the LA Rams going to Oakland. LA Rams are favored by 4.5 on the road against the Raiders. How do you see this matchup?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the Rams are probably the favorites to win. They definitely to win the division, and they made a lot of offseason moves with veteran guys, kind of to take the next step. If they don't win games like this, then why did they get all those guys for? And to me, this is going to be a big game for them to show that they are ready to take that next step against a team like Oakland in a hostile environment. Even though they lost Mack, they still have Carr. They're going to put points on the board. The people in Oakland are going to be crazy. They're going to be wanting the Raiders to the Chucky's back and the old Raiders and everything. So it's going to be a real hostile environment for them. To me, it's a perfect way for them to start the season because you're not going against impossible odds, but you're going against good enough odds to show your merit. And I think this is going to be an important game for the Rams to show that they can win and to win decisively. So I think they'll win by at least 10 points.
Yeah, I have the Rams winning this one easily as well. Like I said, with Oakland, I think it's a transition season. But like you said, the division is wide open. So anything can happen there, season-wise. But for this game, I got the Rams winning pretty easily. So now let's move on to do sports trivia real quick, and then we'll get you out of here. So we're going to do 2 Jets questions, because you're a Jets fan. So for the first question, we know Joe Namath is still the all-time leading passer for the New York Jets. Who is second in passing yards for New York Jets? And it's multiple choice. Is it Richard Todd, Chad Pennington, Vinny Testaverde, or Ken O'Brien?
It's Ken O'Brien.
That is correct. Yes, Ken O'Brien from 1984 to 1992 threw for 24,386 yards during that time. And someone who had a decent career. he still had more losses than wins during his time with the Jets, but did have some decent seasons there. So shout out to Ken O'Brien, the second leading passer in Jets history. For the second question.
Do you remember where he went to college?
No, where did Ken O'Brien go to college?
He went to UC Davis, which is a cooking school.
Oh, wow.
He was. That's why people were surprised he was taken ahead of Marino in the '83 draft, because he also came out of that quarterback draft with Elway and Marino and Jim Kelly, the 1983 quarterbacks. So O'Brien was a guy that, when the Jets picked him, they're like, why would we pick him over Marino? But Marino had a bad senior year at Pittsburgh, and people didn't think he was going to be as good as he wound up being. But the funny thing about O'Brien is that if you look at his career was okay. I mean, he definitely got off to a great start. I think in '85 he led the league in passing as far as efficiency. And then in '86 the Jets got off to a 10-1 start. It looked like he was going to be a superstar. But then his offensive line just crumpled around him, and he got sacked so many times. He got beat up so bad because he held on to the ball for too long. But one thing that O'Brien continually did, though, is he played very well against Marino. If you look at his season stats against Marino, they are very good, and he beat Marino more than he lost to them, which is more than you can say for any other Jets quarterback.
Well, I love that you have so much knowledge just offhand about these quarterbacks. Ken O'Brien is someone who historically people will say, he's known for being taken ahead of Marino and one of the many mistakes that the Jets have made over the years. But like you said, he did have a decent career, and it wasn't all his fault that it didn't pan out.
And he always got Marino. I mean, he always played in those games. He put up great numbers in those games against Marino. So head-to-head, he did very well against him.
Okay, for question number 2, who is the second leading rusher in Jets history? We all know the Hall of Famer Curtis Martin is first. So who is second? Is it Fredman McNeil, Emerson Boozer, Mark Snell, or Johnny Mector?
Let's see. You have Emerson Boozer, you have Matt Snell, or you have Johnny Hector. But to me, Freeman McNeil, I know he led the league in rushing one year in 1982. And he was a long-tenured Jet. Even though he had a lot of injuries, I would say he's the second leading rusher.
Man, you are on point. I definitely got to come with tougher questions next time. So, yes, Freeman McNeil is the second leading rusher in Jets history. He had 8,074 yards from 1981 to 1992. Like I said, a lot of injuries, but he averaged 4.5 yards per carry. So it definitely leads to, the imagination, if he was healthy, what he could have done. It seems like he was definitely a pretty good running back.
Yeah, it's funny because he was the number 3 pick in the '81 draft out of UCLA. And Darnold is the number 3 pick out of USC this year. Freeman was really hard to tackle. That's the thing. He would make guys look silly because he had such quick feet. But yeah, his problem was he would get injured so easy, and that's why he's not a household name, but Jet fans know who he was.
Yes, definitely. He's someone who would make for a great forgotten player, which is our next segment. So forgotten players is where we pay homage to players who may have been good but not great, great but not recognized, or players who you may have just forgotten about who we want to remind you of. So who is your forgotten player today, Mark?
Well, I think if you're going to mention the Jets, a forgotten player for them is John Riggins. Now, people know Riggins for his play with the Redskins. He led them to the Super Bowl, went over the Dolphins Super Bowl 17, and then he led them back to the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 18, where the Redskins scored over 500 points and had one of the greatest offenses in the history of football. But Riggins started his career with the New York Jets, was the first Jet to run for over 1,000 yards, and he is an NFL Hall of Famer. But people seem to forget that Riggins was a Jet at one point in his career, and he played with Namath. And he was a back that had a lot of versatility. And then when he went to the Redskins, he was just pretty known as a big cruising back, and helping Joe Theismann and get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. So he's a guy that he had set the NFL record for touchdowns one year. I think in '83 he ran for 25 touchdowns. So he was a guy that was a punishing back, very interesting personality. If you ever interview him, the guy is very outgoing. He's very outspoken because the great interview. But to me, when you're talking about the great running backs in NFL history, people forget Riggins, and Hall of Famer, a guy who definitely made his mark. And for Jet fans, the first Jet to ever run for 1,000 yards. So I think that's a pretty good way to be remembered.
That's a very good forgotten player. Like you said, everybody thinks about his time with Washington, but like you said, it started with the Jets and did have some success there. Now, my forgotten player is known for his time with the Bengals, but he did spend some time with the Jets as well before going to Arizona and going back to Cincinnati in his career. I'm talking about Boomer Esiason.
Wow.
Yeah, Boomer Esiason started off at the University of Maryland. He was the 38th overall pick in the 1984 draft by the Bengals. Had some really good years for the Bengals. Someone who was consistent. He wasn't someone who blew you away with his numbers. He never led the league in passing yards, but of course he was going against the Marinos of the world and Montanas during that time. So it's hard to judge him by that. But very consistent. Someone who completed 57% of his passes throughout his career. Led the Bengals to a few playoff runs. He also was an All-Pro in 1988. Made 4 Pro Bowls during his career. Also made 1 Pro Bowl with the Jets in 1993. So that's
shouldn't have. Shouldn't have. But people forget he was the NFL MVP in 1988 as well.
Yes, that is true. Did get MVP as well. So very solid career there for Boomer Esiason and John Riggins, our forgotten players today. Man, I had a great time with you on the show. I love your knowledge. Definitely got to have you back on. I hope you enjoyed yourself today.
Yeah, absolutely, David. It's always fun coming on with you, and thank you for having me on as a guest and for me being able to talk about some of the things I'm involved in. Thanks again for having me.
No problem at all. And before we let you go, tell the people again where they can find you, the pages that they need to like and follow, and the name of your book that will be coming out this spring.
The name of my book is called My Scars Tell a Story, and it speaks about my battle with cancer that I had when I was diagnosed when I was younger, and kind of the side effects that I still live with today that affect every day of my life. And if you want to find out more, you can research me on Facebook, Mark Kelly, or you can go to my Facebook page, CK Magic Sports, or there's another page called Cancer Survivors Permanently Affected by Treatment, which basically is me explaining some things and hosting a site that has to do with survivors who deal with long-term side effects and the fact that they can't work anymore or cancer has taken away their ability to live their lives the way they did before they were sick. I think that's just a lot of people that are affected by it. There's a lot of the cancer community that doesn't really get talked about. Yeah, you beat the disease, but now what are you going to do with the rest of your life now that you're dealing with these side effects? Also, if you go to my CK Magic Sports page, there's a GoFundMe there. If you click on CK Magic Sports, you'll be able to see it there. If you want to donate, because I could definitely use that to help pay for some of the proceeds for my book. But that's another thing that people can do that would really help out. So there's just a couple things where they can find me. If they want more information, they could also email me at ckmagicsports@gmail.
Yes, sir. Make sure you like those pages. Look out for the book. I'm definitely going to get it once it comes out. Awesome story, man. It's something that, like I said, affects everybody directly or indirectly throughout history. So make sure you follow. Now, that's the end of today's episode. Make sure you subscribe to The Real Deal with Damian Adams on all platforms, YouTube, Spreaker, and Apple Podcasts. Follow me at The Real Deal, WDA, on all platforms. And until next time, go real or go home.